Prior to the installation of your retrofit breaker, you'll need to change out the existing door. This is the new IMG retrofit door. To remove the old one, remove the bolts on the top and bottom, and then the IMG door should drop into the bottom hole and be bolted with a 1/2-inch bolt on the top. You're also going to have to install the extra auxiliary box. This auxiliary box has the already pre-terminated cable for the breaker, as well as you'll have to terminate on this incoming one line here your communication line, RJ45 connection, and then 2 holes here for your incoming and outgoing power from the neighboring cell to the next neighboring cell. The box should be mounted somewhere on the right-hand side of the inner cell. Once you have the auxiliary box and the door installed, next insert the breaker into the cell. Ensure that when you push it in, it all lines up and they do not pinch the communication cable close to the breaker. The breaker should push all the way in until it stops on the stops and the breaker is fully engaged. Before connecting the cable, ensure that the breaker and the disconnect are both in the open status. Now that both the disconnect and the breaker are in the open position, remove the dust cover caps on both the connector and the top of the breaker and connect up the connection. At this point in time, you should see the relay come on as it powers up. Now that the power is engaged, we're going to rack in the breaker. As you begin to rack it up, the shutter should move towards the back, allowing the stab connections to move vertically. If the shutters do not move, the breaker is incorrectly aligned. Continue racking until the gray plate touches and the limit switch is engaged. Now that we know that's fully engaged by the fact that this plate is now touching the top of the cell and the limit switch is engaged, go around the back side just to verify that the ground is well engaged in the correct position and that all your phases look like they're fully engaged as well. Now that the breaker is fully racked in, close the door, latching it shut. The breaker should be reset if it's showing a fault by hitting the reset button. And to engage the breaker and to make it turn on, simply close the disconnect switch. You can now see that the contacts on the disconnect are closed through the window. And then press the close breaker button. And down below you'll see the breaker status change from green to red, indicating the breaker is now closed. Now that the breaker is closed and it would be energized, to de-energize and open the breaker, simply press the trip button on this SEL relay. The breaker trips and the breaker status now shows as the breaker being open. If you want full isolation, you can now open the disconnect switch as well and visually see that you're fully disconnected from the bus. So it has a few interlocks built into this breaker. First of all, you can't close the breaker without having the disconnect in the open position. So as you see here. So you must close the breaker or close the disconnect first, and then you should be able to close the breaker. As you can see, now the breaker status says it's closed. And in the same respects, if somebody opens the disconnect, trips the breaker instantaneously as well for full isolation. Also, if someone were to unrack the breaker, it would also trip the breaker. If you like, you can add Kirk keys to the handle for an interlock system, as well as padlocks to lock the handle out in the lockout procedures.